Imagine sitting in a room with 7 strangers. A card appears in front of you. It shows 1 line. Another card shows 3 lines. One of them is obviously the same length. The answer is so clear that you barely need to think. Then, the first stranger answers, wrong. The second gives the same wrong answer, then the third, then all the rest. Now, the room is waiting for you. Do you say what you can see, or do you say what everyone else just said? Decades before social media, Solomon Asch built a machine for turning that moment into history. But the question may have started when Asch was 7 years old at a Passover Seder in Poland. His grandmother poured an extra glass of wine and placed it at the table. When Asch asked who it was for, his uncle told him it was for the prophet Elijah. Asch was skeptical, so his uncle gave him one instruction: watch the glass. The boy stared at it, and after waiting, expecting and watching, Asch thought the level had dropped. Years later, he remembered the incident as a story about suggestion. One person tells you what to expect, and suddenly your own eyes seem to confirm it. Asch never claimed he had solved that childhood mystery. He even admitted he did not know whether it had caused his later experiment. But in 1950s America, he created a much harsher test. This time, the glass would not be alone. The experiment was presented as a study of visual judgment. The real participant entered a room with a group of apparent students. In reality, the others were Confederates, actors who had been told exactly when to give the wrong answer. The participant did not know this. Everyone received the same task. Look at 1 line on the first card, then compare it with 3 lines on the second. Which line matches? The answer was not hidden. It was not a difficult calculation. The correct line was deliberately obvious. For the opening trials, the group answered correctly. The real participant followed along because nothing seemed unusual. Then the trap closed. On the critical trials, the Confederates began choosing the same incorrect line. 1 voice could be dismissed as a mistake. 2 voices could be coincidence. But when 6 or 7 people calmly gave the same wrong answer, the participant faced a choice that had nothing to do with geometry. Stand alone publicly, or join the majority. Asch's classic studies reported a striking result. On critical trials, participants gave the wrong majority answer roughly 1/3 of the time. Around 3/4 conformed at least once. About 1/4 never conformed. A small group followed the majority every time. The experiment did not show that everyone was weak. That was the uncomfortable part. Most participants resisted most of the pressure, but many people still surrendered at least once, even when the correct answer was sitting directly in front of them. Then, Asch changed one detail. He gave the participant an ally. One person in the group answered correctly instead of joining the unanimous majority. The pressure weakened sharply. The ally did not need to persuade anyone. He only had to prove that standing alone was not the only option. Asch also found that pressure rose quickly as the majority grew, then leveled off once several people agreed. A larger crowd did not necessarily create a larger effect. The danger was not simply numbers, it was unanimity. One united group could make an obvious answer feel socially dangerous. One dissenting voice could break the spell. That made Asch's experiment more disturbing than a simple story about people copying one another. The participants were not being threatened. Nobody held power over their jobs, families, or bodies. They were asked to judge lines in a room. And still, social reality began competing with physical reality. Asch later warned that the tendency to conform could make intelligent, well-meaning people call white black. His concern was not that human beings were permanently foolish. It was that education and society could teach people to fear isolation more than error. His experiment also had limits. The original participants were male college students. The task was artificial. A line judgment is not a political belief, a medical decision, or a moral crisis. Later studies found that conformity varies with culture, group identity, task difficulty, and whether the majority is unanimous. Modern replications still find social influence, but they do not prove that every crowd controls every person. That distinction matters. Asch did not discover that people believe anything they are told. He discovered something more precise. When an obvious truth becomes a public test, the cost of disagreeing can alter what people say. The glass of wine, the line cards, the unanimous strangers, each story turns on the same pressure. Someone tells you what reality is supposed to be. Then everyone around you confirms it. The escape route is simple, but not easy. Someone has to speak first. Would you have given the correct answer in Asch's room? Or would you have waited for one other person to prove you were not alone? If you want more stories about the moments that reveal how people behave under pressure, subscribe to History That Matters.